Dear students, this is your second lecture of your 12th chemistry unit number 1. In the previous lecture, lecture number 1, I have covered the syllabus part of your unit number 1, and then we discuss about the introductory part of your solid state. Okay. Now in this lecture we'll move towards the next part of your syllabus, and we'll move ahead in the discussion part. So first of all, let's start with the difference between the crystalline solid and the amorphous solid. To understand this topic and the difference, I'll advise that first of all you go through the lecture video lecture number 1, then you'll be able to understand this lecture number 2, because this lecture number 2 is related to the lecture concept that I discussed in the lecture number 1. Okay, so let's start with the difference between the crystalline solid and the amorphous solid first of all. So the first thing is that, as we have seen in lecture number 1 also, so in crystalline solid you have a definite shape and geometrical form. Okay, I have shown pictures of your crystalline solid and the amorphous solid in lecture number 1, so you can refer that picture, and then this point is pretty much clear from that picture. Okay, crystalline solid have a definite shape and the geometrical form, whereas the amorphous solid is concerned, okay, so they do not have any geometrical shape. Okay, this is the first difference. Second thing is that crystalline solid have sharp melting point. What is the meaning of this sharp melting point? For example, if you have any crystalline solid, let's say that X, okay, and you are providing heat, okay, to this crystalline solid, then it will melt at a particular definite temperature. The meaning of this point is that sharp melting point means after supplying the heat of certain quantity, the melting will start at a particular given temperature, in fact. Okay, so this is the meaning of your sharp melting point. Whereas in amorphous solid is concerned, so they have a wide range of melting point of the temperature. What is this meaning of this wide range? For example, if you are heating, then sometime it may melt at T1 temperature, at some instant it will melt at T2 temperature, T3 temperature. So it will have a range of, like in this case, we can see that it has a melting point from T1 to T3. So in between T1 to T3, the melting point can vary for any particular instant of the time. Okay, this is the meaning of this one. Now third point is that about the rigidity and the compressibility. So your crystalline solid and as well as amorphous solid, both are rigid and incompressible to a certain extent. Okay, one exception in the amorphous solid is the graphite. We'll see that why graphite is soft in nature. I'll take one more lecture in that case also. So why the graphite, although in the amorphous solid, but why it is an exception to be just soft in nature. Then point number 4 is about the clean cleavage. Clean cleavage means that whenever you break the crystalline solid, then you get a very plain surface. Okay, like this one. Whenever you break this thing, so the surface will be very plain here. Whereas in this case, amorphous solid, when you break it, then you may get a surface like this one. Okay, whenever you break the amorphous solid, so this type of surface is you will get it whenever you will break the amorphous solid. Okay, but in crystalline solid you will get a very straight line, or you can say clean cleavage, plain surface whenever you break the crystalline solid. Then the second last point is they have a definite heat of fusion. Okay, means at a particular temperature they will will be fused. Okay, whenever you supply the heat, means they will change the state. Heat of fusion is concerned with that one. And in this case, amorphous solid, they do not have a definite heat of fusion. And the last point is that anisotropic and the isotropic, two things are there. Anisotropic means mechanical properties and electrical properties will depend upon the direction in which you are measuring, or direction in which you are applying the force or applying the external cause. Whereas in amorphous solid, okay, it doesn't depend upon the direction. It is independent of the direction of the application of the external cause. So in every direction it will remain the same. Okay, I'll take this point in further discussion also. I have taken this point further, as you can see. So till now this is the difference between your amorphous solid and the crystalline solid. So sometime questions comes in this to differentiate between crystalline solid and the amorphous solid, or sometime the question multiple choice question can also be framed from these differences. So we have to understand the differences in a very clear and conceptual manner. Okay, let's start with the next topic. That is your, just now I have told you that why amorphous solid are isotropic in nature. This is required to be understood. Sometime this kind of conceptual questions come for the 2 marks also, so that's why I am taking this point also. So why amorphous solid are considered as an isotropic in nature? So first of all we need to understand what is the meaning of this question. The question says that properties such as mechanical strength, refractive index and electrical conductivity all are same in all direction. Okay, now it is because, why this is so, because in if you refer to the lecture number 1, in that lecture number 1 I have shown you one figure of your amorphous solid. In that I have shown you that you have a short range of the order. Due to that short range of the order, whenever you apply the mechanical force, external cause, or whenever you are measuring the refractive index, so it remains same throughout the structure of the amorphous solid. Okay, that's why they are isotropic in nature. As you can understand this thing from this point number 2 also, that arrangement of particles is not definite along the direction, whereas in crystalline you might have seen that the direction or the arrangement is in a definite way. So the overall arrangement becomes equivalent in all directions. So whenever question comes, so you can mention these 3 points and answer will be okay, but we need to understand 3 points first of all. Okay, now in the next I have taken another conceptual question, that crystalline solid are anisotropic in nature. Again the question comes why. Okay, again the question comes why. So the answer is that, as you can understand this answer with the help of this diagram or this figure. As you can see, this is the structure of your crystalline solid. Okay, this is the structure of your crystalline solid. Now in this case you can see that I have taken 2 points, 2 lines, or you can say 2 planes I have taken, AB and CD. Now if you see that, if you see in the direction of AB, okay, then the arrangement of the constant particles are different. They are differently arranged. Whereas when you see in the direction of CD, the arrangement of the constant particles is different. Okay, obviously, because whenever you compare the plane AB and CD, so in case of your AB, this part, okay, has a different number or different arrangement. In this case you have a different density of the constant particle. Similarly, when you see in this direction, so this is just because of this difference in the arrangement that you have in a different planes. So this because of this thing, they are anisotropic in nature, means their refractive index, their mechanical properties and the resistance will vary, okay, or will be different in different direction. Okay, properties such as shearing stress also, it's a very important point. Shearing stress is also different in a different direction. Okay, so sometime the question comes like I have discussed this thing, like amorphous solid, why it is isotropic in nature, and second thing is that why it is anisotropic in nature. Okay, so very important concepts are involved in this thing, and question sometimes comes in the conceptual manner as a short answer type. That's why I have discussed this point separately. Now some more important points that we need to understand rather than solid state properties. Like liquids, amorphous solids have a tendency to flow through a very in a slow manner, okay, through a very slow speed. So sometimes they are also known as your pseudo liquids or super cool liquids. Okay, so like you can take the example of gels. So if you have seen the previous lecture one, in that one example of your amorphous solid is the gel. So you can understand that they are nothing but the cooled liquids which have a tendency to flow. Like you are, if you consider like jam, bread jam, you can consider. So although it has a tendency to flow, but speed is very less. So that can also be considered as an amorphous solid. Second point comes your polycrystalline solid. We have studied about crystalline and amorphous, but one type of solid also there is that polycrystalline solid. So what are these polycrystalline solids in fact? So some solids, okay, they will appear as an amorphous. Okay, they will appear as amorphous as a whole. Okay, means let me make a diagram for this explanation. For example, this is your material. So as a whole, this material, okay, will seem to be amorphous, but whenever you take the microscopic level, or you can say very small parts, whenever you cut it in this way, okay, so this small part will behave as a crystalline nature, or will have the nature of crystalline. Okay, so as a whole, now try to understand, as a whole it is amorphous, but as an individual, as an individual, it will behave as a microcrystalline. Micro, the word has been given the just because we have divided the complete amorphous part into a small part, that the word micro has been added here, and this is your crystalline. Okay, so these are the polycrystalline solids that we are having. So as a whole it will be isotropic in nature, but microscopic, or you can say the microcrystalline will have an anisotropic nature. I repeat again, I draw the same diagram. Means as a whole, if you consider this thing as a whole, means as a complete, so this complete will have a nature of isotropic. Okay, but a single unit, or you can say a single part, will behave as an isotropic. Okay, so this is the meaning of this point. Now some of the applications of your amorphous solids are you are having glass is an example of amorphous solid, rubber is an example of amorphous solid, plastics, and photovoltaic material. Okay, photovoltaic material means the material that are being used to convert light energy of the sun to the electrical energy. Okay, we'll discuss this thing also. So this is your amorphous solid applications. Now the examples of crystalline solids are like metallic elements. You can have like iron, copper, silver. Okay, and we do have the non-metallic elements as a crystalline solid, like sulfur, phosphorus, iodine, and compounds like NaCl. Okay, ZnS, zinc sulfide, naphthalene. These are the form of your crystalline solids. Okay, so sometimes questions small question answer type comes that what do you mean by crystalline solid? Define with the help of example. This type of questions also comes, so that's why I have mentioned the examples here. And sometimes the small questions like short answer type, like what are the applications of amorphous solids, what do you mean by polycrystalline solids. So that's why I am taking these points as a separately, just to make you people to understand that the concept also and the type of the questions that can be framed from this one. Now the next topic for the discussion is your classification of crystalline solid. Till now whatever we have discussed, till now we have discussed about the solid state. Let me summarize. Till now we have discussed about the solid state. Okay, then we have discussed about the types of solid state. Okay, in the types we have discussed about the crystalline. Okay, and then we have discussed about the amorphous. Now we are going to discuss about the crystalline solid in detail. Okay, now the topic now which I am going to start now is concerned with the crystalline only. So let's start with this one. This is the classification of your crystalline solids. So crystalline solids, so on the basis of intermolecular forces, means how can we classify the crystalline solid? Means what are the basic parameters, or you can say what are the factors that we considered when we want to classify the crystalline solid? So the factor or the parameter that we considered for the classification is the intermolecular forces, means the forces between the two atoms. So what kind of force is that one? Depending upon that we define. Okay, like if you have one atom, this one, another atom, this one, and it between these atom there will be some intermolecular forces. Okay, here I am writing down, it will have some intermolecular, okay, the force. So the nature of the intermolecular force will play the role in the classification of the crystalline solid. So the first thing is that what is your van der Waals forces or London forces. You might have studied this thing in 11th class also. Then ionic bonds, covalent bonds and metallic bonds. So intermolecular force may be like van der Waals forces in nature, ionic bond force in nature, covalent bond kind of force is there, or the metallic bond is there. So depending upon that, there are four classification of crystalline solid. One is your molecular, another one is ionic, third one is metallic, and fourth one is your covalent. Okay, so we'll see this thing in this lecture. I'll try to finish all those 4 points. First of all, let's start with the molecular solid. So what we understand from the molecular solid? First of all, see, to understand any topic, we have to first of all to understand the technicality hidden behind the terminology itself. Then it will be easier for us to understand the concept, because once you understand the technicality hidden behind the technical terminologies or the topic, then half of the part of the concept is already clear. So first of all, break the things. The molecular solid means we are having the solids and we are having the molecules. Okay, and see the first point written here, the constant particles of matter are molecules, and in this case your particles or the constant you can say particles of this solids are tightly packed. Okay, these are your tightly packed, and they form the molecular solid. Okay, this is the thing that we have. So on the basis of nature of the molecular, on the basis of nature of molecules now. Okay, now for example, if you have molecule A and if you have another molecule B. Okay, so again you can classify, because see, molecule A and molecule B. So may be possible that A and B are same. Are you getting my point? A or B may be same, means same molecule, or you can say same type, or A is not equal to B, means they are different type. Okay, they are different types. So now again, depending upon that, we are classifying the molecular solids. So molecular solids are, first of all, are non-polar molecular solid, then second one is your polar, and the third one is your hydrogen bonded molecular solid. So we'll see this thing one by one, starting with the non-polar. So non-polar, as the word indicates, that non-polar means there will be no polarity. Means no polarity means what? Dipole moment will be zero, or the net effect of the dipole moment will be zero in this case. Polarity comes from the dipole moment. Dipole moments comes from the you can say the arrangement of the charges in a particular direction. For example, if you have this negative, this positive, it will make a dipole. Okay, again this is positive, this is negative, it will make a dipole. Means they are arranged in a particular order, particular fashion, particular manner. Then your dipole moment is being formed. Okay, so this is not present in the non-molecular solids, non-polar molecular solids. Okay, so that's why the dipole moment, as I have told you, that is zero, and molecules are, this is very important, the molecules are made up of your same kind of atom. We have to understand, like iodine, chlorine, all these things. As you can see here, I have taken the diagram of this iodine. So iodine molecules are like in this way, they are made up of same, and there is no polarity in this one. Now some of the examples, like hydrogen molecule, chlorine molecule, iodine is there, and the forces is your London dispersion forces exist between them, the two atoms, and the characteristic is that they are soft in nature, they do not conduct electricity, melting point is low, and they are stable in liquid and the gaseous state at STP, standard temperature and pressure. Means at a standard temperature and pressure, so they will exist as a liquid or as a gas. It depends upon, now you may have a question ki sir we don't have a hydrogen liquid. It depends upon that what is the instinct of that very particular molecule. If the instinct of that very particular molecule is to exist in the form of liquid, then it will exist stably in the form of liquid. It will not evaporate at normal or standard room temperature pressure. Like hydrogen normally exists in the gaseous form. Okay, in this way you can have this one, all the 4 points you can understand. Now the next discussion part is your polar molecules. Now as I have discussed in the previous one about a dipole moment, you can understand this dipole moment from this diagram also. As you can see, we have a particular arrangement of the charges in a particular manner. Okay, all the positive are in this way, again positive in this way, so in this way, and then we are having a force existing between the dipoles in this way. So this is the nature of your polar molecular solids. So that's why it is being mentioned here that molecules are held together by strong dipole forces. And again, very important point, atoms that combine form molecules are different in nature. So these are these minute points that we need to understand when we have to define something. Okay, because if in the question it comes that differentiate between non-polar and the polar molecular solids, so if you understand this minute points now, then it will be easy for you to answer the questions. Okay, then like previously we have discussed about non-polar. So polar molecular solids examples are your sulfur, oxygen's atoms. Like you have combination of sulfur and oxygen, it makes the SO2 form. So SO2 is a polar molecular solid. Then properties are soft in nature, they do not conduct electricity. Melting point is although low but higher than that of the non-polar. Okay, and exist in liquid and the gaseous state at a standard room temperature and pressure. So this point is similar to the similar to non-polar, but these 2 points and I think this point is also similar, non-conduct electricity. This point is different, in this point is different, and this is also similar. Okay, now coming toward the next topic is your hydrogen bonded molecular solid. So as the word clear that hydrogen bonded, it means that in this type of solids their one element will be your hydrogen compulsorily. Okay, as the terminology is clear, I always used to say that whenever you want to understand any topic, you have to understand the terminologies written there. So hydrogen bonded molecular solid means in this type of solid one element will be the hydrogen, as you can see here. Okay, the diagram I have mentioned here, that it is your, this is the H2O, this is your H2O, water is there, and this is your NH3. Okay, so covalent bond in this case here, polar covalent bond, try to understand, covalent bond is there but it is polar in nature. Okay, covalent bond will be there but covalent bond will be polar in nature. Okay, so this thing you might have studied in 11th chemistry also, that what is covalent bond, what is polar covalent bond. So the concept has been taken from there. So as you can see, between H and F means hydrogen and fluorine, hydrogen and oxygen, hydrogen and nitrogen. So hydrogen is a compulsory part of this hydrogen bonded molecular solids. Okay, now just discuss about some of the properties that we have. Boiling and melting point of hydrogen bonded molecular solids are higher than that of the polar and non-polar. So in the multiple choice question, the questions how can the questions can be framed for this one? The question can be framed that which of the following has the highest melting and the boiling point? Option number A, non-polar solid. Option number B, polar solid. Option number C, hydrogen bonded molecular solid. Option number D, none of these. Okay, so like, let me write down. For example, if I write down the question, which of the following has highest melting and boiling point? Okay, let's say that this is the question, and option number A is your non-polar, option number B is your polar solid, option number C is your hydrogen bonded, and option number D is your none of these. Okay, so obviously in this type of question you have to see the options first of all. If the options are same under the same type of solid, then you have to see in that solid under which category it falls. Okay, so and non-conductor of electricity, again the question can be from this one: which of the following has a conductor is a conductor of electricity? If I change this question and if I change this option above all, okay, if the question is that non-conductor of electricity, okay, non-conductor of electricity, then in this case the option will be above all. Okay, so this type of objective questions can be framed from the point itself, and they are solid and volatile liquids under specific temperature and pressure, like H2O. So a specific temperature and pressure, like ice H2O, it exists as a solid at a particular a specific temperature and pressure. Once you take out the ice from your freezer of your fridge, then it will start melting and it will exist in the form of water. Okay, so this was the all about the today's lecture, lecture number 2. Let me give a brief review of all this what we have discussed so far. First of all, we have started with the difference between crystalline solid and the amorphous solid we have discussed. Then we have discussed that why amorphous solids are isotropic in nature. Then we have discussed crystalline solid are anisotropic in nature, what is the reason behind that one. Then we have discussed few important points like what is polycrystalline solid, why amorphous solid are known as your pseudo liquids or supercooled liquids. Then we have amorphous solid applications we have studied, then application of crystalline solid we have studied. Then in the next we have discussed about the classification of crystalline solid, how can we classify the crystalline solid. In this crystalline solid, I have discussed that what is the parameter, what are the factors which we consider for the classification of your crystalline solid, and depending upon that what are the different classification. So in the classification we have started with the molecular. I tell you that till now we have discussed only the molecular part. So in this video lecture I have covered this molecular part completely. In the next lecture I will be covering ionic, metallic and covalent solids and the further topics. Okay, so you may be you are not required to get confused that lots of topic had been discussed, but try to bifurcate the things into the parts. Okay, so whatever these points are there, molecular solids, and after that in the molecular solid itself we have classified them into non-polar, polar and hydrogen bond. So the topic that we have covered till now is your up to this point, molecular solid up to we have covered starting from the first topic of your unit number 1 of your chemistry 12 solid state. Okay, so that's all from my side. If you have any doubt in any topic or point, then in the video lecture you can in the comment box you can write down that about the doubt, and I'll be covering the doubt in or taking the doubt in the coming video lectures. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video and take care of yourself.